best site renewable energy without having these impacts? How can we optimize the best sites for renewable energy and avoid destabilizing the carbon cycle? So I look forward to continue working with you. I remember those 2007, 2008 hearings that you held, Senator Pacheco, and appreciated the opportunity to testify then, as I do now. And I look forward to continued collaboration also with Senator Eldridge, not only as a Nature Conservancy person, but a constituent and a friend. So thank you very much for being here today. And thanks, I appreciate the time now to go to my Green Action meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephen, and really thank you so much for your work on water infrastructure, environmental protection, climate change, and clean energy. Appreciate you being here. I know you have a busy schedule like many people here tonight. Someone who also I know has a busy schedule, I appreciate him stopping by in the back, Jay Gonzalez, Democratic candidate for governor. So Jay, thank you for being here. Would you like to come up and say a few words and testify, or just stopping by?
Well, if you're going to give me the
Right, I figured that would be the response. Thank you for being here, very kind of you.
No, thank you, and senators, I appreciate what you're doing, and everybody showing up. This matters. I'm here mostly just to learn. Wanted to stop in for a little bit and hear the testimony. This is an issue I care deeply about. I'm hoping soon to be putting our own position out on issues of energy and climate change in the environment. And I want to be as well informed as I can. So this was a great opportunity to learn from you and from others who have been paying a lot of attention to this and are smart about it. So glad to be here.
Thank you again, Jay. So just looking at the sign-in sheets, the next person, Arnie Epstein from Elders for Climate Action. Arnie? From Stowe.
Yes, I'd also like to express my sincere appreciation to Senator Pacheco and Senator Eldridge for the terrific work you've been doing on clean energy and the battle against climate change. My name is Arnie Epstein. I'm from Stowe. In Stowe, I'm the town energy manager and I'm our town's green community coordinator. But tonight I'm here representing a group called Elders for Climate Action. And the folks on my left are also from Stowe and also Elders Climate Action activists. And that is our focus, is the battle against climate change. So my comments here today are in that capacity, not in the capacity of energy manager for the town of Stowe. So Elders Climate Action believes that climate change is the greatest threat facing future generations, and we are in a race against time to dramatically reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The crucially important Global Warming Solutions Act mandates an 80% reduction in state emissions by 2050, as was pointed out. The consensus among climate scientists is that if this can be achieved worldwide, we will avoid the worst impacts of climate change. Achieving this goal in the state is an enormous challenge, yet it must be done, and as elders, our primary concern is for the generations to come. The state needs a credible pathway towards achieving the mandate of the Global Warming Solutions Act. By credible, we mean the pathway must be technically, economically, socially, and politically realistic. There are several potential pathways, and there is no crystal ball to see 33 years into the future to decide today what is the most feasible path. However, what we can and must do now is take action on what we do know and work towards a solution elsewhere. What we should not do is lock in pathways that will prevent us from achieving our goal. We must also ensure that focus on near-term objectives, such as the 2020 mandate for the 25% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, is done in such a manner that's consistent with our long-term goals and does not put the state on a dead-end path. This requires a broad perspective, as well as a dose of humility healthy allergy to dogmas by all stakeholders. With the recent Supreme Judicial Court ruling on the Governor's Executive Order 569, which has already been referred to, there is renewed focus on meeting the interim 2020 goal of a 25% reduction in greenhouse gas relative to the 1990 baseline. It remains to be seen whether this goal will be met, but it's important to recognize that if we do meet it, the bulk of the greenhouse gas emissions reduction that we will have achieved will have been done by fuel switching from coal and fuel oil to natural gas, both for electric generation and for heating and hot water. So even if we do achieve this goal, we'll have to recognize that in the process of achieving it, we've started down a dead-end path. Emissions from natural gas alone today already bust the budget for the total emissions allowable in 2050. The last thing we should do is increase our capacity for natural gas, yet our administration continues to advocate for increased natural gas capacity. On the other hand, many climate activists see a commitment to 100% renewables and energy independence as the only way forward. These are undeniably desirable objectives, but it is far from clear whether they are realistic, and therefore it is premature to lock out other pathways. What we hope is that all stakeholders will agree on the paramount objective of battling climate change through dramatic reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. If we keep our eye on the ball, we will succeed. And here are some of our specific recommendations from Elders Climate Action. Using the best information available, set goals now for greenhouse gas reduction for 2030 and 2040. Also set goals for major greenhouse gas emission sectors, specifically transportation, residential and commercial heating, and electric generation. With the challenges presented by transportation and heating, it is unlikely that an 80% reduction in emissions can be achieved by mid-century. Given this and the fact that much of the emissions reduction in these sectors will result from fuel switching to electricity, emissions from the electric sector must be close to zero to meet the overall 80% reduction. So in other words, we can't be targeting an 80% reduction in the electric generation sector. It has to be close to 100% in order to meet the overall goal of an 80% reduction statewide. We have to start planning now to phase out our dependence on natural gas. We cannot make investments in increased capacity that will lock us into this fossil fuel going forward. There are today better energy alternatives. We recommend full speed ahead on solar and wind, while at the same time focus on how these variable renewables can provide abundant, economical, and reliable electric service at very high levels of penetration. We don't know yet how much of our energy requirements can be provided through these renewables, but we are still in an early stage of deployment, and significant further generation can be supported. At the same time, we must continue research and development on other forms of clean energy, including sustainable biomass and next-generation nuclear. It is far too early to bet the planet on wind and solar, as we won't get a second chance if we go wrong. We need to get serious about transportation. The emissions from the transportation sector represent over 40% of the total emissions in the state. If the federal government doesn't do its job, Massachusetts must join with other states to force the market to produce affordable electric and plug-in hybrid cars. Non-carbon emitting vehicles must become the obvious choice for consumers, and we should plan on selling no more cars powered by internal combustion engines by 2035 at the latest. For larger vehicles, it may be necessary to develop sustainable biofuels. A realistic alternative to liquid fuels has not yet emerged in this transportation sector. Home heating and hot water represent 12% of emissions. About 2/3 of the homes in 2050 are the homes we live in today, and nearly 90% of these homes are heated with fossil fuels. substantial fraction of all homes in the state to electric heat pumps is needed, and given the 15 to 20-year lifetime of a heating system, we may have only one chance to do it. Thank you for initiating the Clean Energy Futures Tour and giving us the opportunity to present the views of Elders Climate Action on this issue of paramount importance.
First of all, when you stood up and said you represent Elders Climate Action and this whole group, but you're not old enough to do that. So let me just say that I couldn't agree more with what you have just testified to, and we want to make sure that you are aware, and those that are here are aware that when we look at our mix of energy options, and for those that may say, and who knows, we may have someone here tonight that says it, I hope not, but we may, that it's impossible to make these goals, to make these requirements, the 2050 requirement, etc. I just wanted to share with you, I just got back from Europe, and in Portugal, a country that does not have the wealth that Massachusetts has, quite frankly, they just ran, I think within the last 2 months, they just ran a whole week on 100% renewables. Their wind, solar, their grid infrastructure is cutting edge. I was in Ireland speaking at a biofuels conference, looking at anaerobic digestion, looking at a whole range of other technologies that are moving forward. We can do this. The technologies are out there already, and there's new technologies coming online every single day. What's happening in Massachusetts today, over at MIT and other institutions within our borders, is just simply amazing. What's going on with storage is a game changer. When you can decentralize the grid and have storage backup for those peak times, and you finally get these utility companies out there, instead of just trying to go forward with more gas or more other options, but actually develop options for consumers to be able to purchase alternative times during the 24-hour cycle, so they can buy energy or use energy at a less expensive time. So there's a lot of things happening, and so I thank you for your leadership on this and for your group's efforts on this, because it truly is a legacy issue. This next generation may not have the opportunities that we have had if something isn't done, and if somebody isn't out there talking about how critical this really is at the end of the day. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so thank you, Arnie, for testifying. And we're gonna go through the list. If I call your name and you don't want to testify, just let me know. But the next person we have is Alan Fierce. Alan?
Thank you, Senator Eldridge, Senator Pacheco. I really do want to thank you. I mean, you are two real all-stars, I think, on this issue of climate and what we can do about it in the state. Unfortunately, we don't have a governor who can be a real spokesperson, who could use the bully pulpit to press this issue more firmly in the state. And so, as much as I'd like to thank you, you're pretty much what we've got. And so I'm not going to let you off.
You were doing so well, Alan.
What I'm saying is I'm not going to let you off the hook by just giving you praise. I'm going to stand here and say two things. I didn't write an eloquent speech like Steve Long did and Arnie Epstein did, so I'm just going to give you a couple of quick thoughts about what I'm hoping your committee and through your leadership we can do. And the three things I'm going to say are, you need to do more.
Exactly.
Secondly, with respect to legislation, I'm going to say there needs to be a better way than this piecemeal ad hoc approach that we do every year. And I'll say more about that in a second. And thirdly, I'm going to say you need to raise more funding for this whole effort. With respect to doing more, with respect to the governor, I've said he's not going to be exercising the bully pulpit on this issue. I'm hoping that in addition to leading the legislative charge, that your committee and you and your colleagues can step out front and grab that bully pulpit and start educating the public, raising awareness, and generating the support you need to get this legislative action through. If it's not going to be you folks, who then? We've got a couple of Democratic candidates that we'd like to see, but that's going to be a couple of years away, and given the governor's numbers, I don't think we can put any stock in having that be our saving grace. So we really need you to step out of your legislative roles, grab the bullhorn, and start leading the charge on this. California, I'm sorry to say, they've got a governor who's doing this. On this issue, on getting the word out and using the bullhorn, California's way ahead of Massachusetts. So that's one. There needs to be a better way. We've been at this now for a number of years. We've had successes every year, but every year we've got very active environmental groups stepping forward, more of them every year. Elders Climate Action didn't exist 2 years ago. We do this Groundhog Day routine, it seems to me, every year. We all come in with our different bills. How many bills did you say you had this year? 112, or I don't know, more than that. And the groups try to get organized around a specific set of bills, and then we all come up and lobby, not at the same time, but different people talking to different groups. And maybe we get a couple of bills through, and then it starts all over again the next legislative session. I wish there were a better way to do this, and one of the things I'm going to just throw out there as an idea. I remember, I'm old enough, not only to have a grandchild, but to remember back in the late 1980s, the environmental issue of the day was cleaning up hazardous waste sites. And we had a similar thing like this going on then, with groups coming in one after another with different proposals. You had the oil industry coming in with what they wanted to do to fix the 21E program. And it was chaotic. And the legislators were not happy with that. And to make a long story short, a number of people, including key legislators, including Stan Rosenberg, decided that there was a better way. And they actually included in a budget bill, I think it was in 1990, an element that set up a state study committee of all the stakeholders with a requirement to report back within a year. And that actually happened, and as a result, the 21E program was redesigned, if you can recall that. I don't know whether that model works here. Everybody was in agreement that the 21E program was broken and needed to be fixed at that point, and here I'm not sure you've got all the stakeholders thinking things need to be fixed in a serious enough way to join that effort. But that was thinking out of the box. That was the better way they came up with. Maybe you can figure out a better way than every year coming back and doing this routine again. Thirdly, quickly, raise more funding. Steve Long talked about EEA needs more staff, needs more budget. I can give you 12 different climate action agenda items that all require some state funding. I just bought an electric vehicle, a Volt. I was really happy to get the $2,500 state rebate. I also got a $7,500 federal tax credit. That may be going away as they redesign the federal tax code. Massachusetts is going to have to step up with those kinds of rebates on a variety of energy saving products. Where is the money going to come from? I don't know, but there are many reasons why we need more revenue in Massachusetts. I know the state's in a bucket hole right now, but that just demonstrates the need. We need to figure out how to get the revenue, not only to run the state, but to press forward on this climate action, because 3 words: urgency, urgency, urgency. But it takes funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Alan, just wanted to say that the first point you made, you need us to step out of the box and lead. That's what this effort is really all about. Is if we don't, and I found this out back in 2007, 2008, if we don't keep it on the front burner, if we're not out there around the state, the issue goes away. And last night we were down at Cape Cod, and we're in Mashpee. There were over 100 people that showed up last evening. Had a great turnout here tonight. We're going to be doing 9 to 10 of these, plus other meetings. We're going to keep doing this all year long. And it is frustrating. We get frustrated, believe me, when we're piecemealing different pieces of legislation. But we have to get consensus, not only within the legislature. Usually that means consensus among the citizenry as well, in terms of what type of legislation we're going to get done. And when those bills come to the forefront, and that's why we want to stay in touch with you, we need you to be calling legislators, not only in your own district, but other districts, and yes, the executive branch, to make sure we get these things done. A few years ago, Senator Eldridge and I were in a very fortunate place in the previous legislators that served before Senator Eldridge. When Governor Patrick was elected, we had a speaker and a Senate president that were all on board with a suite of pieces of legislation, and then we needed to, even then, all Democrats that were in charge, but even then they needed to be an additional push to go forward, because the education level wasn't there with, across the whole state yet about what needed to be done. There's no question about the need for funding, but a lot of this, believe me, when I see other jurisdictions and other places in the world where they've moved forward, the technology's out there. The private sector can come in and do a lot of this, but we have to have the political courage and the political will to say we're doing it, and to be able to take the heat and get out there and explain why we're doing it, because it can be done, and I believe it will be done. I'm going to try to be an optimist here and say we're going to get it done, and we'll see what happens at the end of this year. I would ask you to think about it not in a 2-year session. I am frustrated with the 2-year session, because in the first year of the 2-year session, everybody just wants to study everything. We don't have the time. We need to be in that situation saying urgency, urgency, let's act. We know a number of things that do work. Let's get those on the books so we can begin and go forward. And then we need to fund these environmental agencies like your senator is fighting for all the time. I attended a joint committee on environment, natural resources, and agriculture today. We passed a mercury management bill in 2014. 2014.
I know that.
And this administration has not yet developed the regulations for it, so it can be implemented. So this is 2017. I think 3 years is a little, long to be waiting for a set of regulations so we can actually implement it. So I couldn't agree with you more.
DEP has a draft, they're written, and they're not going anywhere.
Well, they said today in the hearing that they'll have the draft out for public comment in July. So anyway, that's what we're dealing with. It's up to us to lead, but it's also up to all of us here. This is democracy. So everybody has to be calling their legislators and staying involved and pushing us to do what needs to be done. And we'll stay committed to that.
Great, so the next, I don't know if they both want to testify together, Kevin Miller and Colleen McGlynn. Do you want to just say Kevin? Okay. Thanks, Colleen. Kevin Miller.
Kevin?
Hello, Senators. Hi, my name is Kevin Miller. I'm the Director of Public Policy for ChargePoint. I first want to start off by thanking you, Senator Pacheco, for spearheading this tour and for always keeping your eye on the dangers of climate change and figuring out sustainable solutions moving forward. And Senator Eldridge, for the generous invitation to participate and for your leadership on the zero-emission vehicle bill that passed in January. By way of brief background, ChargePoint is the world's largest network of electric vehicle charging stations. We have 34,500 charging stations in our network across the country. And ultimately, even though we're a company that's based in California, we're a grassroots network because all of our stations are independently owned and operated. So the 1,500 some odd charging stations that we have in Massachusetts are all owned by either local businesses or state agencies or municipalities or even residents. Our mission is to increase access to clean transportation wherever people need to refuel their electric vehicles or their electric buses, either at home, where most charging takes place, or at the workplace, which is also a critical component, a place where if you provide access to charging, you can increase the likelihood of people to buy an EV by 6 to 20 times, and on the road and in and out of towns. It's really fantastic to be here and to see such a great turnout. In a former life, I worked for former Senator Marion Walsh, and I know that we relied on a spirited constituency out of Southwest Boston, and I know how valuable that is. And I also served as the CFO for the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, and to have the collaboration of dedicated stakeholders, environmental advocates. We always reached the best policy outcomes when we had spirited input, and we knew where to set our course. By way of focusing on what our work is in Massachusetts, we coordinate with policymakers and regulators to overcome the barriers to deploying sufficient infrastructure to support our clean transportation future. Large-scale adoption of electric vehicles and buses and delivery fleets and ride-share fleets will be critical to reducing the greenhouse gas emissions that are directly attributable to the transportation sector. So for meeting our greenhouse gas emissions avoidance goals, focusing on transportation needs to be key, as you well know. And also in meeting our commitments for deploying 300,000 electric vehicles by 2025, as was committed to in the Zero Emission Vehicle Memorandum of Understanding. There's a whole range of ways in which we can support increased access to clean transportation. I just want to identify a few of those and then allow all the other folks here to speak. In terms of the barriers to installing and deploying infrastructure, one of the key things to realize is that the key barrier isn't the cost of the equipment itself, but it's the installation of the equipment. And the cost of the installation, which can, in most cases, outpace and outweigh the costs of the equipment. One of the ways to combat this is by making sure that the new buildings that we construct are ready from day one to accept the installation of electric vehicle charging stations. One key component of the ZEV bill that passed was to have the Board of Building Regulations and Standards consider whether to put forth the requirements in our statewide building codes to have a certain percentage of parking spots be EV ready. So if you do that, you can reduce costs of installation by 80 to 90% and avoid tens of millions of dollars associated with installing all of the EV charging stations we need to meet our transportation electrification goals. Really want to applaud your leadership on those issues and encouraging the Board of Building Regulations and Standards to adopt an EV-ready requirement. And for all the folks in the room, the Board of Building Regulations and Standards is going to be voting on whether to require new buildings to be EV-ready on May 16th, I believe. So there's still time to pipe up and identify the critical need to ensure that our buildings are ready to support our transportation future and to avoid costs associated with retrofitting existing building stock. We can do what we need to do without additional resources if we plan sustainably in advance. Some of the other ways in which you can incentivize and decrease barriers to deploying infrastructure would be to look at the way that our electricity rates are shaped. If we are incentivizing more EVs to hit the streets, we want to make sure that they're charging at a time that's good for the grid and can actually create grid benefits. If you shape that charging behavior to take place at overnight hours, you can increase throughput on the grid. You can actually lower the cost of electricity for all ratepayers. Additionally, looking at the way that faster charging will need to be fueled. It takes a lot of power to charge an electric bus, and if we reform our rate structures in a way that is beneficial to the grid as well as to the operators of charging stations, we'll be able to not only install those stations but actually turn them on and to make them economically viable. So I really want to thank you again for your focus on these critical issues and to encourage your continued consideration of transportation electrification as a means to helping to achieve our greenhouse gas emissions reductions goals.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I just want to say, Kevin, I appreciate your and ChargePoint's leadership, and the zero emissions vehicle bill would not have been signed into law without your assistance, and it was a big step forward. I know we have more to do this session. So thank you very much. The next person we have is Mark LeBlanc. Mark? All set, okay. Peggy Dusenberry from Bedford.
Greetings, Senators, and thank you for your leadership and for coming out on this tour. It's great. I'm from Bedford with another member of Mothers Out Front. As you probably know, we're a group of moms who know how to make a noise. And we made a lot of noise about gas leaks, and we got some legislation on the books thanks to your listening to us. We'd like to continue making a noise. Sue and I here took on the task of trying to keep an eye on legislative matters and figuring out what best for the Bedford Mothers Out Front to do, and I have to admit to being overwhelmed by the 100 different bills, and so I want to echo the streamlining plea. But I also want to say here that the reason we exist is because we don't have a clean energy future. We either have clean energy or we have no future. And we need to remember that. And those of us who are moms, and dads as well, but we're a mom's group, so we've got children, some of us have grandchildren. I've got a great niece and nephew who are very young children. I wonder what their future will be. Will they be flooded out of their homes? Will there be droughts that they can't cope with? Will there be crop failures? Will there be species migration that ruin their habitat? I read this morning in the National Geographic, not the cutting edge of science, but someone's looked at 4,000 species and whether or not they have already made significant adaptations because of climate change. 2,000 of them have changed their habitat, changed their migration pattern and timing, and it's screwing a lot of things up. There are island nations around the world who are already fearful of their future. Climate change isn't the future. We're not talking about 2050. I get a little worried about the 80% down by 2050 rhetoric, although I know it's an important goal. We need a front load. We need immediate, urgent action. We need to look at all those countries who have said 100% of electricity by 2020. Oh, we're already there. It's not just Portugal. Scotland's nearly there. Germany hit 85% last week. Big countries, big systems, they can do it. There's no reason Massachusetts can't do it. And now, not 2030, because that's too late. An additional item that I would like to raise for Massachusetts that I heard a little bit from the Nature Conservancy guy. He spoke about justice between humans and other species, our need for habitat, their need to exist. I think we could also keep in mind climate justice among humanity. Those of us who use the most energy are not the ones who are most harmed by climate change. It's those people who can't move from their low-lying homes or who don't have the income to change their behavior. Anything the state can do to help low-income people change their electricity purchasing, their home heating purchasing, their transportation is a huge benefit that they need. And I would like to commend the carbon pricing bill for that kind of redistribution. Getting down to more brass tacks, I would really like to see fossil fuel infrastructure not being replaced, no new projects. I don't understand why there is any need for any new fossil fuel infrastructure development, let alone for any state or federal money to be put into these projects as subsidies or for any customers or taxpayers to be paying for them. Where we need to be spending the money is on renewable, clean energy projects. I know I'm speaking to the choir here, but I want you to know that myself personally and Mothers Out Front, we are passionate about ending new fossil fuel infrastructure, and I hope that this can become reality in Massachusetts, because that's an old fight we should be getting over, and we should be moving to the future, to a modern grid. Hope you know more about how to do that than the utilities seem to. We need this urgently. We need this for our children, our grandchildren. We're borrowing this land from them, those generations. Let's not ruin it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Becky, and as you probably know, and other members of Mothers Out Front did a forum in Acton on gas leaks a couple months ago, which was very successful. Sue Swanson, do you want to speak to?
I also am a grandmother out front, I guess, and this is my very first opportunity to be in a forum or a meeting like this, and I greatly appreciate it, your work, and also our Bedford Senator Mike Barrett, who are an awesome trio, thank you. There are lots of other people who can speak much more knowledgeably and equally passionately about the legislation that you have sponsored and that other people have. I guess one thing that I personally am interested in is making it easy to do the right thing. And that can be at the individual home level, it can also be at the local level. It applies to economic and environmental justice, people who can't afford to do retrofits and do all that, we should make it easy for them to do that. People who are trying to buy electric vehicles, like we are in a condo, we are getting one roadblock after another. It should be, the default should always be a carbon-free, renewable future for us, for our children, for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Next person is Sharon Brownfield. Sharon? Okay. Rick Lent? Okay. Donna Mills, Sudbury? Donna?
No, thank you.
Okay. I know this person wants to speak, a close partner of mine on many public transportation issues. Keith Bergman, Town Administrator for Littleton, climate change national leader. Thank you for being here, Keith.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman. I want to commend you both for your leadership in Massachusetts and really in the whole country. I'm honored to not only be Littleton's town administrator, but I'm also serving as the president this year of the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, which is doing an awful lot of work on climate resiliency. I also want to put in a plug that Mark and I, for the last 10 years, have been members of the former Vice President Al Gore's Climate Reality Project, who were both trained by Mr. Gore back at the beginning of An Inconvenient Truth. We're now into an inconvenient sequel, and high time too. I want to speak about climate leadership. I think Massachusetts has a unique opportunity to fill the void that exists at a national level. We've got the brightest minds. We've got, in Massachusetts, we have folks who know what the right thing to do is, and we often can pull together and find the political will to get it done. And I think that it's, especially in the vacuum that exists at the federal level, it's so important that the action move to the state level, and that I think Massachusetts has the unique opportunity to be a leader. Right now, it's on a bipartisan basis, and I think that actually creates a unique opportunity to see what can Republicans and Democrats who are sharing leadership do together, and can we forge a national model in addressing climate issues. And so I would want to challenge us all to find a way to have Massachusetts be the leader in climate, because it's a role that we can play, and it's a role that we should play, and I appreciate very, very much your leadership in getting us this far. Thank you.
So Keith, thank you so very much. And do you want to?
I just want to thank Keith for his leadership, because not only has he been doing some tremendous public service as a public servant, but he's been out there giving these talks and doing work for the Climate Reality Project for, it's going to be 10 years pretty soon.
That's right.
And
I
so
gave the slideshow presentation in Concord